Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. Today we are looking at Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, Issue 0. It's published by Dynamite Entertainment. It's written by Marguerite Bennett and Christina Trujillo. Art by Moratat. Color by Andre Sismakowicz. I'm sorry, Andre. Letters by Thomas Napolitano. And this is cover A, which means it is, the art is by Emmanuel Lupacchino and Fabio Mantovani. There is a J. Scott Campbell cover and one by Moriat, but I don't have those. Anyway, this is a real short story. It's just an introduction to the series. After the little story, there are some various art pieces and a little blurb and some ads for other crap. But the little story is actually pretty good. It gives us a nice introduction. It's in the Amazon, and we see Sheena running around. She sees something weird in the sky. She calls it a coyote, which means outsider, and she shoots at it, but it falls into a forbidden temple. So she has to go in and get it because she doesn't want it to disrupt the sacred land, even though her mere presence there is kind of a crime. And she finds a camera, and it kind of weirds her out. And she triggers a few traps. The camera seems to remind her of her parents, which obviously she has a very Tarzan-like origin story of, abandoned child raised in the jungles. Only she lives in a village, as I recall. Anyway, she finds the device and takes it out and seals the entrance to the temple, snaps the machine. But she is spotted by a drone, and there's some loser-looking kid in what looks like a dorm room at Valverde University saying, "What did I just record?" Obviously, he spotted her. The art is really good except for that last page, which almost looks like the kid in the university was drawn by a completely different artist, and an inferior one at that. He looks very manga-ish and silly, and it's like raw lines, whereas Sheena is really well drawn. The coloring is much better. It's got strong finished lines, nice inking, whereas this kid doesn't. And if the art looks like what we're seeing in the sneak peek, then it's gonna be good, but the other one is garbage, inferior, almost indie art, whereas the rest is actually pretty polished. It's not necessarily the best art I've ever seen, but it's definitely solid work. We get a real good impression of Sheena, very athletic, very feminine, and the artist does a real good job. It reminds me of the book Meridian from CrossGen, but it's got a real fluid art form. I like it. It's not my favorite, but it's definitely pretty decent high-end work, almost worthy of being in a bigger publisher. But I was a big fan of Dynamite back in the day when I was reading comics, so I'm kind of getting back into comics. So I've heard mixed things about the direction Dynamite's gone. But I did enjoy this story. I do have several issues of Sheena that I'm looking forward to reading now. And the cover picture I do like quite a bit. But the interior art was really good, I thought. Not the greatest, but definitely I expected it to be much, much worse. So, fun book, except for that last page with the kid sitting in the dorm room. I thought that was a garbage picture. That looked real amateur hour. So hopefully it'll look more like the rest of the story. In the meantime, that'll do it for this one. This is Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, issue 0. I'm looking forward to reading issue 1. Hopefully you are too. And hopefully I'll have that one up soon. In the meantime, thanks as always for listening, and I hope to see you soon. Hello and welcome to another episode of Bad Comic Review. Today I am looking at Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, issue 1. Now I looked at the 0 issue and it was pretty fun. This one was a little weaker, but we'll talk about it. It's written by Marguerite Bennett and Christina Trujillo. Art by Moriat and Demi Macaraz. I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names. This cover is cover E. There are like 20 covers, counting sketch covers, black and white covers, and various variants. This may not be the cover you see in the stores. This is put out by Dynamite, which Dynamite's kind of a mixed bag these days, apparently. And I have to say, the art was pretty good. The pages, again, just like the other issue, where the kid is at his house, look like they're done by a separate artist, and they're crap. I mean, he's got this cat, and it looks like high school amateur hour stuff. But then you get into the jungle scenes and it looks pretty good. It's very dynamic. The cats look good. Like, she's got this pet jaguar or black panther named Yagua or something like that. Sheena's running around and she sees another drone and she calls it a flying turtle. So she, of course, knocks it out of the sky with a spear, only to go back to her village where there's a bunch of armed men getting ready to kill her, or kill the elders. And she jumps in to save the tribe from getting mowed down, and everybody gets mad at her. Like, she's got the leader with the knife to his throat, and yeah, a bunch of people probably would have got killed, but this is a hero book. And they're all taunting her and saying, "You're the one that's violent." Well, you're a bunch of guys with guns pointed at people. That was really annoying. Even her tribal elder or whatever is chiding at her, but she's not wrong. They were gonna mow that old guy down. Then they're like pointing the finger at her for being violent intruder. Whatever. So we learned that they work for Cadwell Industries. Cadwell is apparently some sort of strip mining operation. Some very vague looking equipment. And a surveyor has gone missing. These guys say, the simplest answer is to get out of our way. And then they say, "Take aim, boys." Well, obviously, she wasn't wrong for attacking them. So that was a bit stupid. But then she points to Chim, her pet simian friend, who has the metal turtle, and drops it at their feet and says, "Look, other people know about us. Other people are watching you. Are you as fearless when you're gambling with your own life?" And he doesn't have anything to say to that except that they have 3 days to find the surveyor, and if not, they will guarantee the next one doesn't go missing, and they're going to kill everybody in the jungle. Well, one of the young ladies with a baby in the tribe tells Sheena that she saw this surveyor and that he was in the jungle and he went east. So she's gonna go find him. She hunts around talking to her kitty cat friend. This is the part that really ruined the book for me. She pulls out a roll of film and pulls the film out of the canister. It's still in a canister. It's labeled 800 ISO, which is really fast film to be shooting jungle photography. That's for moving things, moving objects, sports photography, stuff like that. That should have been 400 ISO, but that's neither here nor there. She pulls the film out, holds it up to the light, and there is an exposed negative. That is not how film works. This was clearly written by somebody that is too young to remember film photography. If you had pulled the film out of the canister like that, it would have been exposed to the light and you'd have a strip of black film, not a negative. A negative is suddenly developed on this film. That is not how film works on a canister. And it's obviously an image of her parents. Unless she had a vat of chemicals and then for some reason developed the film and then put it back into the metal can, which would have been fairly difficult, or at least time-consuming and annoying, then there's no reason this would happen. Film does not magically develop into negatives. That's not how photography works. So that really annoyed me, because it's technically incorrect, and it's lazy, because they could have easily looked that up, and in 3 minutes figured out that exposing raw film to light would have ruined it. Yeah. I don't know why I got really upset by that, but I did. Anyway, she tracks this individual down, finds some litter, and then swings around talking to herself for a little bit, finds a guy humming along the stream, which is really dangerous in the jungle. I'll give him credit for getting that part right. And then she jumps down and says, "I found you at last, trespasser," and the issue ends. So Sheena's pretty tough, but there was a lot of hypocrisy with this jungle interaction with these guys that were gonna mow down her entire tribe, and the tribe leader saying that she's given them more reason to get aggressive. Well, that's crap. They were gonna kill you anyway. I think that was a little dumb. It was showing a little too much restraint, I think, on the part of Sheena and the tribe. And they don't find it weird. There's a blonde white girl in this Amazonian jungle tribe. They even say that we're not the bad guy here, but they threaten to kill everyone. Yeah, you are the bad guy. Make up your mind where you're going with the story. So yeah, it was kind of a mixed bag. It was a little confusing. I thought the art was pretty good overall. I thought Sheena was drawn really well. It's very dynamic, lots of action. Not a great story, but not the worst I've ever read. Just kind of middle of the road. The cover picture with the cosplayer, I believe that's Ashley Du. Ashley D-U. I think that's pronounced Du. She's cute, but other than that, It was a fairly weak first issue in my opinion, but not the worst thing I've ever read. So hopefully issue 2 will pick up. I've got the first 4 issues. I think I might order the 5th depending on how these go. So we'll see how it goes from here. Hopefully it improves a little bit. And they're not going to hold back and do as much goofing around with, stopping violent people from mowing down your tribe. But we'll see where it goes. In the meantime, my assessment of this one would be as kind of a middle-of-the-road issue. I wasn't super impressed with it, but I didn't hate it. Except for that film thing. That drove me nuts. But that'll do it for this one. As always, thanks for listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode. Hello, and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. I just finished reading Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, Issue 2. This is from Dynamite. It's written by Marguerite Bennett and Christina Trujillo, with art by Moriat and Demi Machiras. I'm sure I got that wrong. Well, I have the Ashley Dew cover because all the other covers were A, liars, and B, not as sexy. If you're listening, Ashley, call me. Anyway, we pick up where we left off with Sheena jumping down into the jungle to confront the man she thinks is the surveyor. Now, of course, this is the Zona Prohibita in the Amazon. What does that mean? Well, we need a little context first, because it is kind of important to the story. Now, the kid references that he is a student at Valverde University. Now, Valverde is a fictional country used by Hollywood writer and producer Steven DeSouza, and it's kind of made its way into other works as well. It's just a fictional place, and it was also the name of several other places. Like, it was in Commando, it was in Die Hard 2, where General Ramon Esperanza was from, a TV show called Adventure Inc., and it was in the Devil's Due version of Sheena. It was set in Valverde. Now, she lives in the Forbidden Zone in a nature preserve near Valverde. So her tribe is like one of those lost tribe type things, even though they're not quite as lost as they used to be. We get a whole lot of conversation to tell you what I basically did. They're looking for... This is not the guy. This is the kid that was seeing her through the drone. And he's a student at Valverde. And he has a geo-tracking device. And he's a bit of he's a little bit of an idiot. So... yeah, he talks a lot, says nothing. I learned more about his Axe body spray cologne because he tells horrible jokes too than I did anything really about what's going on. It took like 5 pages of excess dialogue to get to the point. The plot was pretty good, but the rest of it, not so much. He's an annoying, kind of dorky, socially awkward, stereotypical TV sitcom man. His name is Marciano, but he wants her to call him Chano, which is a stupid nickname. I guess he's Latino? I'm not sure. But I don't like him. He's annoying. So they get attacked by some jaguars. Sheena saves them because she knows the head of the pride and she can talk to animals. That's one of her, superpowers. And she's super strong, too. So she makes friends with the jaguars, and they get a cool shot of her eyes being superimposed, or cat eyes being superimposed over her eyes, rather. That kind of represents her talking to animals. And he's asking a bunch of stupid questions, being all nervous and useless. How this kid survived in the jungle as long as he did is a miracle, because I don't know if he could survive in civilization very long. So he blunders around and does dumb stuff, almost touches a poisonous plant and stuff like that. But then they stumble into a clearing which has a Incan pyramid. Now, she references that this is a forbidden area because all the sacred sites are. She says the builders can only be the first people, the lords of Patiatii, which is spelled slightly different. I can't pronounce the place, but I've seen the name before. It's a lost Incan city, and it's actually a real legend. It's a legendary Incan lost city. It's somewhere in the Andes, supposedly the east, and it's said to be in several different places: southeast Peru, northern Bolivia, or southwest Brazil. There are even legends that say that it was between Bolivia and Brazil, somewhere in there. just some fabled lost city. It's actually a really interesting legend if you get a chance to look it up. But that's actually a legitimate legend. They're not just making that part up. They find this lost city and there's a statue and they look at it and he rambles on incessantly. And there's way too much talking in this book. Way too much. This is just a bunch of pointless communication. Chano finds a piece of cloth in these vines and it looks like part of a shirt, and they're hoping to find the surveyor and a member of Sheena's tribe that apparently was with him and on the outskirts of the city, so they haven't gone into this forbidden city yet. And he calls it Castle Grayskull and makes some other really stupid jokes. Yeah, the real mystery here is that a member of Sheena's tribe was with this guy, leading the surveyor into this area. Why Caldwell Industries would want that is still a mystery, but they're going to attack her tribe. And this kid that's with her is more concerned about seeing a ghost because he hates ghosts. Well, then Sheena smells something, and yeah, giant plants attack him. Death blossoms. It's actually not a bad issue. I would have cut about half the dialogue if I was the editor here. I would have said tone down the dialogue and move it along faster because there's way too much talking. Like, the scenes with the jaguars is very well told, and there's way less talking. You get the sense that they're surrounded, the cats are all poised well, there's some great shots for the art, so that the art looks pretty good actually, but this guy is just a schmuck, and kind of tired of that. It's becoming such an overused stereotype. We really need to get some new ones, guys, because why is it always that the guy sidekick is so useless around the female hero? Why can't he be like somebody that would actually not die in a jungle, be sort of useful, and have a team up? He doesn't have to be a love interest, he just has to not be a moron. So other than the guy being an idiot, and I kind of hope he does get eaten by jaguars in the next issue, it's an okay issue. There's just way too much talking. You're not going to retain anyone. Sheena's such a good character. She's been around for ages, since the Golden Age, I think. Yeah, the Golden Age. So she's an old character. You're taking a historically great character that was pretty popular several times and teaming her up with a useless guy that makes a bunch of stupid references, and he's not old enough to make a Castle Grayskull reference, I'm sorry. And I think she deserves more competent sidekicks than a bungling half-wit who's just somebody you're cheering to die. So yeah, I don't know. Pretty good issue. I like the cover. Most of the covers are liars. Get the Ashley Duke cover. She looks really good on it. Overall, pretty decent issue. Not the greatest thing I've ever read, but definitely not the worst. I don't know if it's worth $4, but it's probably worth a read if you're bored and want another book to read. Of course, you've got the bungling male sidekick, overused. You've got the evil corporation, overused. And of course, they're oil drillers. So we gotta not only gang up on strip miners, they are also involved in the oil industry, and they spilled oil at the university. So yeah, we've hit all the markers for stereotypes. But at least Sheena's competent. She still looks pretty hot, and she's not an idiot. She's a little pig-headed, I guess, but I think that's more just the story arc than anything. But yeah, overall, pretty decent issue. Not too bad. Hopefully issue 3 is better, but I'm definitely not saying this is the worst thing I've ever read. I'd recommend it. It's probably not for younger people just because there's so much talking, they're going to get bored. But what little action there is was pretty good. Hopefully this picks up a little bit and becomes a little more action-oriented and a lot less pointless yammering. They could have cut 3 pages out of this without a problem. But that'll do it for this one. As always, thank you for listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. Today we are looking at Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, issue 3. This issue is from Dynamite and it's from 2018. Now last issue we left off with Sheena and Chano being attacked by death blossoms. Well, we pick up where we left off there, and Sheena has to fight through the death blossoms, and Chano is a useless idiot. They make it into the temple and seal the temple up by killing vines. A little unclear on that one. And they find some footsteps that lead to a big blood pool where a trap is sprung, and they each have to fight off a trap. Sheena, of course, manages to do it quite nimbly, and the guy is a completely useless pile of crap. And he loses his backpack and his flashlight. Thankfully, Sheena is there to guide them through the darkness, after again another error with how film works, visually anyway. And they find the surveyor's body, but no warrior from the tribe. The surveyor is very withered and unnatural looking in his demise because they heard him die, but he looks like he's been dead for a long time, so he's been clearly drained. And that's when they are attacked by these ghoul-like creatures that we saw a little earlier starting to follow them. And now we see them, they look very ghoulish and undead sort of creatures, but they're clearly ghouls of some kind. So that's where the issue ends. I'm not going to give you too much detail because it's a pretty straightforward issue. And actually, I really like the story, but there's way too much talking in this. Look, Marguerite Bennett and Christina Trujillo did a good story, but they're clearly not used to a visual medium. Show, don't tell is the secret to a good visual medium. You want to show the audience reading a comic book. You don't necessarily need to narrate every single thing that's happening, and there's way too much narration in this. Again, Moriat and Demi Macheras did a great job with the art. The coloring is really good, which is also by Moriat and Casey Silver. Special thanks to Salvatore Leah Studio. Letters by Thomas Napolitano. They actually spelled the name of the city right in this issue, which they didn't do last issue. I gotta say that visually it's stunning. I thought the visuals were very, very good, and the art has definitely been pretty consistently good. Maybe not spectacular, but really good. Sheena looks great. I think Sheena's the best drawn thing in here. The monsters look really cool. The guy is useless, though. He is just your usual, typical stereotype of a useless man. He wanders around, lost, doesn't know how anything works, gets himself in trouble, can't get himself out, needs a strong, independent woman to save him. It's become a horrible pop culture stereotype, the man in distress. They complain about the damsel in distress while you're doing the exact same thing. And it's tiresome, it's lazy, and other than that, I could get used to that if there were consequences, but there aren't. And there's way too much dialogue in this book. For a visual medium, there's way too much talking, narrating exactly what we're looking at. We don't need that. What we need is some better descriptors for the artist, and let the visuals stand on their own. It would be much more effective. But overall, I'm not saying not to buy this. I thought it was worth a read. I don't know if it's worth $4 because of the overuse of dialogue. It was a really big turnoff for me, but it's a pretty decent story, and I do like the action. So I think they're doing really well with having it action-packed, and Sheena, knows what she's doing. But there could be a really good juxtaposition here of somebody using 21st century technology to aid them, and Sheena's primal instincts, and having those two things work together. Instead, we have this sort of fish out of water, stupid man who doesn't understand how anything works because nobody's ever been in nature, apparently. And Sheena is the strong, independent woman, and it comes off like a very, very bad stereotype that is really unnecessary and very heavy-handed, when it could be a really good story of two people from different worlds working together like a buddy cop film. It's a good story, but I give it a recommendation only because I really like the concept and I like Sheena a lot. The adventure is really good. It's just their heavy-handed use of the, oh, he's a dumb guy, tee-hee-hee, is really tiresome, and it's a really big turnoff. And I may actually end up dropping the series if they don't dial it back a little bit and make the guy a little less useless and stupid. Either get a different guy in there that's not a complete moron, or toughen this dude up a little bit because he's useless, and honestly, I would have left him behind if it were me. Any 13-year-old Boy Scout would be more useful than this guy, so he would honestly have died in the forest. But overall, not a bad book. Not spectacular, but definitely not the worst thing I've read this week. I would give it a soft recommendation just because it's got some cool visuals, and the adventure story itself is pretty good, despite the fact that the man is completely useless and stupid, and it would have been better without him. Or if she had had somebody that was actually semi-competent in there with her. So be sure and check it out. It's Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, issue 3 from Dynamite. I'm hoping it improves. I don't have a lot of faith that it will, but I'm hoping it does, and I'm going to continue to read it just to see, at least for now, if it does improve and we could get rid of some stereotypical useless men syndrome. But that'll do it for this one. As always, thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. Be sure and hit like, share, subscribe, and we hope to see you on the next one. Thanks for listening. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. Today we are looking at Sheena, issue 4. This is, of course, the Sheena Queen of the Jungle series from Dynamite. This is written by Marguerite Bennett and Christina Trujillo, but the artists have changed. Now we have art by Maria Sanapo and Mario Torrisi, color by Cici de la Cruz, letters by Thomas Napolitano. Now we pick up kind of where we left off with these monsters coming after Sheena and Chano. And the monsters look completely different than they did before. They're not these blue Tron type monsters anymore. Now they look like emaciated, zombified. Sheena and Chano have a fairly interesting fight scene. Chano's a little less useless than usual. And Sheena stabs one of them with her knife. And her knife was passed down from the first people. And it has this like glowy color and makes blue light come out of their faces. So it's some sort of blessed or mystical type weapon. Well, to get away, they have to go out through the death blossoms. And they make their way back to the village. But the strip mining camp has uncovered something of like a sarcophagus. And back at camp, at the village, there's a bunch of armed guys there ready to wipe out the tribe. And they shoot a panther for no apparent reason. And they start to fight, but Sheena stops it and says, look, I can offer you something better. Your surveyor guy is dead. And they're like, well, you know, that doesn't matter anymore. She's like, no, I can make you rich. There's loot at the temple. And she leads them back to where the mining camp is. And the mining camp is suddenly attacked by one of the zombie things. And they kill a guard and start chewing on him. And just then, they realize that Sheena wasn't kidding, because she had warned them kind of about that. They realize there is a mutual enemy here. And then she's like, we need to stop this before any more of them show up. Then they start flooding out of the hole where the camp was, or the mining equipment was. All in all, the story is definitely a little better. It is improving. And the art is completely different, but it's not bad. It's actually pretty good. It took me a minute to adjust to it. I think Chano still looks stupid, but overall not too bad. The zombies weren't quite as cool looking. I liked them better when they were like this bluish ghouls as opposed to like just standard zombie fare. So now they're green instead of blue, whatever. That's not a big deal. But the story's pretty good. Sheena looks pretty hot. So a lot of the guards look kind of the same, so it's kind of hard to tell them apart. But overall, it's not a bad story. It's pretty decent book. I have the cosplay cover because Ashley Dude's hot, and I like that. Otherwise, yeah, there's a bunch of ads in the back. That was kind of annoying because they're a bunch of full-page ads. Overall, not a bad book. I thought it was pretty good. I'd recommend it. It wasn't spectacular, but if you're looking for a decent read, there's still a little too much talking, but the action did pick up in this issue. I'm looking forward to reading issue 5. We should have that up next week around the same time. So be sure and come back for that one, or come back for some of our other videos. In the meantime, that'll do it for this one. As always, thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel, and we hope to see you on the next episode. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, Volume 1, Issue 5. This is, of course, from Dynamite Entertainment. We last left off, Sheena and Chano were at a dig site where the Caldwell men had uncovered some sort of seal. Now zombie things are pouring out, the Face Stealers. Well, of course, the Caldwell guy thinks that it's a trap set by Sheena, although that's a lot of work to dig a big hole, bury something for a few hundred years, and then wait until somebody finds it in the middle of the Amazon. So, very crafty plan if it indeed was. Well, the guy takes a shot at one of the creatures, and the bullets don't do anything. He was holding Chano, and Chano manages to elbow the guy and get free, but Sheena steps in to save them by stabbing the creature with her dagger, which is magical, of course. For some reason, we can see the dagger inside this creature's chest. I don't know what that's all about. And then there's a lot of fighting going on. The Caldwell men manage to fall back, but Chano decides to go help Sheena after being a little bit of a coward. And she's doing a pretty good job, but those things are everywhere. And her tribe shows up to help out, and they have poison tip arrows that can kill these things. Sheena jumps down into the pit, and Chano's an idiot. Somebody says, clear a path for Sheena, and he yells, and Chano too! Because he's a bungling moron. And of course he trips and falls flat on his face, gets attacked by one of these things, manages to stab it in the eye with a stray arrow, and Sheena's down in the pit wrestling with some creature that starts making references to her mother, and we get another image of that film with an exposed negative that should not be developed. So, oh my god, learn how film works, please. Take a photography class or get online, look it up. The internet is not expensive. Anyway, that is really bugging me about this storyline. They don't know how film works. Anyway, they have to put the two pieces of the stone together. It doesn't seal, it's not enough, so somehow, for whatever reason, she sticks her dagger in the crack, and boom, it magically seals. That made no sense. There was kind of a weird thing. Anyway, all the creatures are dead because that's sealed. Chano says, well, I have photos of you and we're gonna escort you Caldwell people to the civilized world, and then I'm gonna expose you people. And they're walking out of the jungle, and Sheena's talking to Chano, and what the elder of her tribe is speaking to someone else. They say that, there's a secret. Well, it's pretty obvious secret. She's blonde and doesn't look, she's obviously white and doesn't look like anyone else in the tribe. So it's like that conversation with the kid that's like redheaded and lives with a black family. Like there's a story there, but nobody's talking about it because the kid's just not ready yet. Well, there's a tee-hee scene where Sheena puts a flower in his ear, and he's like, hee-hee, he's got his finger by his mouth, all silly coy. That was ridiculous. Seriously, why is it that you can't have a strong female character without making the men look like incompetent boobs? It was an okay issue. There was a lot of action. I like that. Still a lot of talking. A lot of it pointless, which, is really unnecessary. The Caldwell guys, quite frankly, they probably would have been killed by these creatures. I don't know how nobody died. That didn't make a whole lot of sense. The script, I think, needed tightening up a little bit, and some of the art was, dare I say, poor. So the art was by Maria Santipo and written by Marguerite Bennett and Christina Trujillo. Color by CC De La Cruz, letters by Thomas Napolitano. I haven't seen Thomas Napolitano's name around a lot. He's doing a really good job overall from what I've seen. Coloring was fine. Sheena looked good through the entire issue, but the men looked a little weird sometimes. So I think a little bit of practice needs done. Especially the bald guy looked quite silly a lot. The monsters, I don't know, they looked really generic by the time this issue came out. 2 or 3 issues back when Moriat was doing the art, the creatures looked cooler. They were like bluish and had like blue glowing eyes and stuff. That was way cooler. These just look like generic ghouls. And sure, they shapeshift, but I don't know. That seemed kind of lame. And the way they solved the problem by pushing rocks together and then jamming a knife in it, that was just dumb. I'm sorry. I think they had a little trouble coming up with a solution to this problem, but that was really lazy, I thought. Overall, it was an okay issue. I don't like this guy Chano. He's really annoying and useless. The guy's a buffoon. And this tee-hee thing with the flower was absolutely ludicrous. That is not the type of guy that Sheena would be doing anything other than toying with as a pet, because she is the queen of the jungle. Needs like a Tarzan type character to be her sidekick or her adventuring partner, not some weird little college dork. Overall, decent issue, not spectacular, but I wasn't overly upset about it. It's a little middle of the road. I thought the ending was a little weak. Otherwise, that's about it. But that'll do it for this one. As always, thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel, and we hope to see you on the next episode. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, issue 6 from Dynamite. Again, this is written by Marguerite Bennett and Kristen Trujillo, art by Maria Sanpo, color by CC De La Cruz, and letters by Tom Napolitano. Now, I of course bought the cosplay cover because yum. Alright, we start out in the Zona Prohibita in the Amazon, where Sheena is gathering fruit with her animal friends, and she sees one of Chano's drones, and the fruit is of course rotted from some sort of evil rot. Now she goes to her friend Lero, who tells her that it's some sort of supernatural stuff, and the chiefess comes back. I don't know why she's called a chieftainess, because she'd still just be considered a chieftain. But of course she has a tattoo on the side of her head, which is of course shaved, because that's how SJWs work. So we've got the stereotypical, quote, powerful woman with the shaved side of her head and a tattoo. And she blames Sheena for a lot of the problems, which Sheena, of course, blames herself for. Then there's some emotional validation from her best friend, Lirio, sure, whatever. So Sheena has to go into the jungle to face some huntress who apparently is causing all these problems. And there's some more emotional validation. Then the two ladies, Lyrio and Sheena, go into the jungle to look for this person, the huntress, and the source of the problems. Well, it's there that they run into a cartoon character from Looney Tunes. Remember that big red guy with the blinking eyes, and they shave him, and that's all he was a big thing of fur with two blinking eyes? That's what this guy looks like. Yeah, and it's a Mapinguria. The Mapinguria is like a Bigfoot creature from Brazilian and Bolivia folklore. It doesn't look like this thing, which has one giant cyclops eye and a mouth on its stomach and 4 arms. Yeah, not even close. I kind of would have liked to have seen the other type of the creature, the actual mythological one. I think is probably a little more scary than this cartoonish thing that they're fighting, but that's an artistic decision. The fight scene looks pretty cool, actually. It goes on for a couple pages, which I was fine with. There's way too much talking in this book. They really need to dial it back quite a bit, actually. They need to dial it back. Probably about half of the dialogue needs to be cut out. Comics are a visual medium, not a narration. While they're investigating what this creature is, because they had to poison it to kill it, while they're talking about it, a net drops down over them, and Sheena manages to cut free, and that's when they are attacked by the Huntress, and that's the cliffhanger ending. The Huntress lady calls Sheena Coyote, which is the outsider word, because Sheena is blonde and pale, unlike everyone else in the tribe. So obviously Sheena's a little oblivious to reality because she doesn't know that she doesn't fit in. Aside from the validation nonsense and the chieftainess, which is no tribal's gonna call that. Most tribes are patriarchal. I don't see them kowtowing to modern vernacular chieftainess. They would still call her a chieftain. Aside from that, the basic story was good. The fight scene was pretty cool with the monster. I'll give them credit for that. The emotional validation was really distracting and annoying. You don't have to emotionally validate everybody. It's lazy writing. And it's obvious they're building up some sort of relationship between Sheena and Chano, which is pathetic because that guy's worthless and stupid. Realistically, somebody from a primitive society like this would not find somebody like that attractive. They would see them as a weak hanger-on. Overall, a decent issue, not bad. It was better than the last issue for sure. The art is definitely better than last issue. I still can't tell how old anyone is. So like the elder looks like he's like, the monster looked silly. It would have been better to use like a Bigfoot type monster. But the people are drawn pretty well, especially the women are done really well. All in all, it was an okay read. Emotional validation thing really is distracting and lazy though. So they need to get away from that and cut down the talking, and it could have been a really good book. But as is, it's a recommend, but it's a mild recommendation. Not bad, not spectacular, not terrible. It didn't grab me and pull me in because of this constant need to be a little bit more politically correct, but I think there's a lot of potential for the book. It's just I think the writers have to tone it down a little, but that'll do it for this one. As always, thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, issue 7. This is from the 2017 series, written by Marguerite Bennett and Cristina Trujillo, art by Maria Sanapo, color by Cici de la Cruz, letters by Tom Napolitano. Now I have cover A, which is by Maria Sanapo and Cici de la Cruz. Now I do like this cover, pretty cool. It's got the big cat, you got Sheena sitting there, some weapons, skulls, monkeys, etc. So, Lero and Sheena are in the jungle looking for the cause of the poisoning, and they think it's this huntress. Well, of course, Sheena overreacts and aggressively attacks the woman, because that's apparently how Sheena's personality functions, as she just goes and hits things first. Well, it turns out this woman may be her grandmother, because apparently her mother was a dark-skinned indigenous person, and Sheena is in fact a blonde, clearly pale white woman. So there's there's that. Now it turns out Caldwell Industries is trying to open this temple that we didn't really see before, and this guy Ransom is one of them that had been on the team that tried to relocate Sheena's tribe, and he comes up with the notion that, hey, Sheena closed that one portal, why don't we use her to open this one, because what could possibly go wrong? So that's probably the actual source of the problems. So this conversation that Sheena's having with this huntress must be going on for like hours, because the guy just magically shows up in the woods, and things go pretty downhill from there, and we're left on a bit of a cliffhanger ending, of course. All in all, it was a pretty average comic, not bad. I think Sheena's a little too impulsive and aggressive for somebody that's been living in the Amazon for as long as she has. Her personality would not lend itself to survival in that situation. She would be much more of a hunter, much more of somebody that stalks things. But overall, it was an okay story. Not the greatest, not the worst. The art's okay. It's a little better than last issue, I would say. But a lot of the scenes, you can tell that the artist was kind of cutting corners. But Sheena looks really good. So does Lero. Overall, it was an okay issue, though. Was it worth $4? No. You could easily get this out of the dollar bin and not feel too bad about it, I think. But $4 is vastly overpriced. If you pay more than $1 for this, you're probably not getting your money's worth. I'd argue that $1 or less is a good price. You could probably find these in some quarter boxes for that matter. But it's an okay read. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. But it was okay. It was pretty well written. It was a little better written than some of the previous issues. On that front, I'll give them credit for improvement. But it was just sort of an average, mediocre comic. That being said, if you can find it cheap, I would say you're probably not going to feel too ripped off for $1 or less. But that's just my opinion. As always, thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you want to help the channel in other ways, links are in the description and on the About page, and we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, issue 8. This is from the 2017 series, written by Marguerite Bennett and Cristina Trujillo, art by Maria Sanapo, color by Cece De La Cruz, letters by Tom Napolitano. I have cover A, which is by Maria Sanapo and Cece De La Cruz, which I do like the cover. It's pretty cool. Doesn't really give you an idea what the storyline is, but it's got a pretty girl on it, so I'll take that. Now, Sheena's been captured by Cadwell Industries, and the female scientist that's examining her in the cage is making all sorts of threats. She's obviously a little bit scared of Sheena, but that doesn't stop her from being overly confident at many points during their conversation. And that's primarily where this issue is at, is there is a conversation largely between this woman and Sheena. She's threatening Sheena, they're going to do experiments on her, etc. But first they want to open this temple door, and they have captured Lero and Chano in order to do that. Sheena also has some electrode bands on her wrists, and we get to see the first interaction between Mr. Cadwell and Sheena, and well, this ends on a cliffhanger that doesn't look too good for our heroes. Now, all in all, the art is pretty good. There's a few panels that are really bad. The bald guy Ransom, he always looks terrible. Now, the art is a downgrade from the first 3 issues. I'm sorry to say. The artist still needs to do some refinement on their anatomy work, but there are panels that are pretty good. Sheena looks really good throughout, and Lero looks pretty good most of the time, but the cliffhanger ending was a little disappointing. From a story standpoint, this does feel like a rehash of the first storyline in many ways, so I'm a little disappointed with that, but I don't know, it might be okay. I just think there's a distinct lack of imagination on what kind of threats could be in the Amazon. It's kind of the evil corporation, the same sort of hidden danger being rehashed, and Sheena just not having any self-control whatsoever. There's no sense of stalking or hunting in here. It's just she reacts with anger, which is a little disappointing. I would think that somebody in Sheena's position would be a little better at hunting their enemy and making methodical moves rather than just aggressively attacking everything. But overall, it's an okay issue. It's not worth the cover price, but if you find it in a discount bin, it's a quick read and the story seems okay. It's just not particularly particularly original or inspiring. I really think that Bennett and Trujillo should have read Warlord for a little bit more ideas of what to do with a savage frontier. I can see why the series didn't last very long, unfortunately, but it's okay. It's just not spectacular, and I'd say if you could find it for $1 or $2, it'd probably be worth it. Other than that, it's kind of a forgettable story arc with a classic character from the Golden Age that deserves better. But that's just my take. As always, thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you want to support the channel in other ways, links are in the description and on the About page, and we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, issue 9. This is the second to last issue of the 2017 series, written by Marguerite Bennett and Cristina Trujillo, art by Maria Santipo and Vincenzo Acunzo, color by Cici de la Cruz, letters by Thomas Napolitano. I have cover A by Maria Santipo and Cici de la Cruz. The executive editor was Joseph Rybrandt, associate editor Anthony Marquez. Sheena reboot by Stephen E. D'Souza. Okay, so we start out with a really terrible one-page spread where some soldiers are fighting the monster that was unleashed from the temple. I didn't really have a problem with the monsters. They look goofy, but whatever. I've seen stupider things. Lero and Chano are trying to escape, but they get trapped anyway, and the soldiers try and keep them at gunpoint. Sheena tells them to run, but of course they don't listen, and they end up getting stuck. Meanwhile, the bad guys are trying to get out of the facility as well, and they know that if the thing gets out, it's going to be a real problem for them. Plus, the military, apparently, that they had been bribing is on the way to raid the facility anyway. There are a few other surprises in store for Sheena and her friends, and they're probably not very good. It ends on a really good cliffhanger, and I'd have to say this issue was actually pretty decent as far as action goes. Sheena is portrayed way too impulsively, in my opinion, in this series, and too amateurish and juvenile, but overall it's not a bad story. It's just a little trite because we've kind of already seen this one with the first story arc, which in my opinion was a little bit better than this. But if you can find this at $1 or less, it's worth picking up. It's an okay story. It's not gonna blow you away, but it's far from the worst thing I've ever read. It's just a fairly middle of the road book, but it's not something I would seek out per se, but it's probably worth picking up out of a 50-cent bin or a quarter box or whatever. Something for $1 or less. You probably won't feel too cheated. Not Dynamite's greatest work, but definitely not their worst. The art does suffer quite a bit from being a little amateurish at times. Some of the panels definitely show improvement by the artist, so I think the artist has some potential. It just needs a little more refinement, and it definitely needs somebody to kind of guide them and give them some editorial oversight. But the perspective shots are good. It's very action-packed, very dynamic, so I'll give them some credit on that. So still not the worst I've read, but not the greatest. But if you find it cheap, I'd say pick it up. Otherwise, it's not worth the cover price. It's not something I'm going to seek out and trade paperback, but like I said, if you find it cheap, it might be something to kill some time. It's fairly safe. There's not a lot of swearing or anything. I didn't see any of that I can recall. So it's a fairly decent book for teenagers. It is fairly violent, but beyond that, nothing particularly offensive. So I will recommend it, but it's a recommendation only if you can find it very cheap. But with that being said, that's just my take. As always, thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you want to support the channel in other ways, links are in the description and on the About page, and we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, issue 10. As far as I know, this is the last issue of the series from 2017, written by Marguerite Bennett and Cristina Trujillo, art by Maria Santipo, color by Cici de la Cruz, letters by Tom Napolitano. I have cover A, which is by Maria Santipo and Cici de la Cruz. Executive editor was Joseph Rybrandt, associate editor Anthony Marquez. Sheena reboot by Stephen E. D'Souza. Now, I like this cover. It doesn't tell you a lot about what's going on, but most of the covers haven't, and as far as pinup material goes, it's good cover. So I like that. I would prefer something a little more action-packed and dynamic, but the artist really does a good job drawing Sheena, so I'm not too upset. Okay, so Sheena and her friends have to reassemble the front piece off of the temple because after the events of last issue, things went horribly wrong. They have to cross a geyser field to get to where the temple used to be to stop the jungle rot, and of course they're being pursued by a ransom called Cadwell and the scientist lady whose name I don't care about anymore. Now they come across Sheena's grandmother, who is very angry and hates all outsiders, so Chano's presence is very, very difficult for her to reconcile, and we are actually left with an interesting ending to it. It was a little predictable because they kind of hinted at it last issue. Since there's not another issue, it kind of goes nowhere, so this revelation is kind of a lost story thread, and I think they were planning on writing more issues, but it got abruptly canceled. And based on the story, I can kind of see why. This story arc has just been a little bit of a rehash of the previous story arc, and they just kind of changed the monsters. I really don't think the creative team really knew what to do with Sheena for an ongoing series. And that stinks, because Sheena is a good character. There's a lot of things you could do with jungle-based characters. Tarzan's been around for ages. So it's obviously a difficult thing for them to grasp and work with, and the low sales numbers probably hurt it more than anything. And I actually would say some of that is due to the art. The art is not ready for prime time, but for Dynamite, it's fairly standard digital art. I think the artist really draws women very well, but seems to have problems doing masculine faces, especially on Ransom and Chano. Some of it looks like they were using 3D models to kind of gauge where the people were, but the artist really does a great job drawing Sheena and Lero, like I said, but you can't tell people's age very well, and that's a problem with digital art in general. It seems to be a kind of an ongoing issue with most artists. I think the artist has a lot of potential, but needs some more work to refine their technique, and I think the creative team altogether really kind of needed to do some more communication maybe, because the monsters are very uninspired. The plot line's kind of rehash of the first plot line, and it really just feels very rushed. So all in all, it's an okay issue, but it's not an end cap to the series. It has this dangling plot thread that's never going to be resolved unless they do another Sheena story, which, you know, I would like to see them do more Sheena stories. I just don't think this is the creative team that should have been handling it. I would recommend it if you can find it cheap. The art is pretty rough in spots, but it's not the worst I've ever seen, and not even the worst I've seen from Dynamite. So if you can find it for 25-50 cents, it'd be worth it. Even $1 wouldn't be bad. You'll probably need to pick up the whole story arc to grasp what's really going on here, but the last 2 or 3 issues would probably fill you in enough. Do I think it's going to revitalize Sheena in any way? Probably not. It's not a particularly overly original plot thread here, but it had potential to be going somewhere, and I'm a little disappointed that the series was canceled because I do like the character. So this was a kind of a rough issue to end on, but at least it did get wrapped up and we did see a conclusion to the story. So that being said, I didn't hate it. I wasn't madly in love with it. I think the creative team has talent. It's just misdirected here, and I think the artist needs to do a little bit more work before they're ready for prime time. But that is just my opinion. As always, thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you want to help the channel in other ways, links are in the description and on the about page, and we hope to see you on the next one.